Those chosen to enter this vault must be our best and our brightest. For when the fighting is stopped and the fallout has settled, you must rebuild. Not just walls, not just buildings, but hearts and minds, and ultimately, America itself.
Hola, comrades. Today's topic of interest, Fallout 76. When this game was announced, it caused an uproar. Ever since the original Fallout was released in 1997, the series has gained a reputation for combining expansive, post-apocalyptic worlds, clever gameplay, and a quirky, distinctive sense of humor. It has also been a single-player experience, but Fallout 76 is multiplayer. This decision caused outrage throughout the Fallout community. Thousands of fans signed a petition to demand the inclusion of a single-player mode, prompting Bethesda to clarify that one can play by themselves if they like. It is absolutely not an MMORPG addition to a non-MMORPG franchise in the tradition of Final Fantasies XI and XIV and The Elder Scrolls Online. So, if this is not that seismic a shift for the Fallout series, why did it occur? What is the point? The answer lies in the other details about this game that have been overshadowed by the multiplayer controversy. This game takes place in the early 22nd century, which actually makes it a prequel to the rest of the Fallout series. 25 years after the nuclear war that created the massive wasteland that you explore throughout the series, one emerges from Vault 76 and must start the process of rebuilding civilization. I've never been the biggest fan of the Fallout series, but even I find this premise fascinating. My core problems with the series stem from it being a little too blithe about its post-apocalyptic setting, compared to not only The Last of Us or The Road, but also 28 Days Later and Mad Max. But 76 really hits a genuine vein, and evokes a genuine emotional response. While I will not dispute the quality and ambition of the past games, they have treated the apocalypse as much like a flavoring as a serious issue to be dealt with. 76 doesn't carve out a different identity entirely, it's still demonstrably Fallout, but the minor adjustment in the premise has major repercussions, and it is also the reason why this game needed to be multiplayer. A single-player game is designed to make the player feel unique and special. They are Link exploring across the rich fields of Hyrule on a quest to defeat Ganon, or they are one of the many bland protagonists of the Pokémon games, catching Pokémon to become the champion and stop the region's evil team from inflicting massive damage upon the world. But multiplayer games are not only designed differently from single-player games, they have a different ethos altogether. It is not entirely an ethos of cooperation, but it is an ethos of camaraderie and a togetherness. It is an ethos of those who all have the same goal, and who are all working tirelessly to achieve that goal. This fits perfectly with the idea of rebuilding the world after a nuclear war. It's not only about you, it's about y'all. It's about a small band of survivors stepping out into a world that has been reduced to rubble and trying to make something of it. Yes, as is the case with every major open world game, there's an undue emphasis on the size of the world, but it plays on a deeper emotional level here. It's not just pure boasting. It reminds me a little of what Breath of the Wild did. I'm not saying Fallout 76 is comparable in quality or ambition to Breath of the Wild, but with Breath of the Wild there was a definitive message sent with its size, that message being, this is a different kind of Zelda game. This is the kind of Zelda game with a large enough open world to not just compete with, but surpass the likes of Skyrim. Fallout 76's message is not that decisive, but there is a message. It might be implicit, but it exists, and that message is, you need this bigger world because Fallout 76 is a different kind of game. It's not just a standard Fallout game. It's about starting to rebuild this world. There are no human NPCs in Fallout 76. It is nothing but an empty wasteland. As NPCs have been crucial to previous Fallout games, this required the developers to get creative. Some of the roles filled by human NPCs were given to non-human NPCs. While more interestingly, some of these roles were integrated within the environment itself. This is in of itself a major shift, but the tonal shift that results from it is even more significant. Previous Fallout games relied upon the idea of a culture that emerged after the apocalypse. Not a lush, vibrant culture, but still a witty, idiosyncratic culture that relies heavily on dark humor. The world is a far cry from how it was before the apocalypse, but the apocalypse has become normalized. People have adjusted to it. There is no such adjustment in Fallout 76. The world is just barren and empty. If the adventure was single-player, this would be dour and a downbeat. What stops it from being completely depressing is the multiplayer element. The idea of rebuilding the world after the apocalypse by yourself rightly sounds ludicrous. The idea of doing it with others is more credible. The challenge is still daunting, but it is not impossible. Obviously, even if the experience was completely single-player, there would have to be the implication that the burden of rebuilding civilization after the nuclear apocalypse did not completely fall upon the protagonist. The idea that a single person could rebuild society is absurd, even by the logic of big-budget AAA video games, wherein the actions of a single great hero mean everything. But multiplayer makes the truth that the burden of rebuilding has to be shared more visceral and honest and profound. You don't know everything about those who are rebuilding the wasteland with you, and none of you know anything about this wild world you're stepping into. You've just emerged from the vaults. All of this is completely new to you, but it is a newness that you're experiencing with others. That experience is shared, which alleviates the stress and dismay of it, while also adding further twists and complications to it. And this sense of solidarity extends even to the location in which the game is set. One attribute I've always admired about this series is how it uses real-world geography to its advantage. Intimately interested in showcasing the effect of the apocalypse on real places. It includes that in its world building. Fallout New Vegas, of course, takes place in Las Vegas, while Fallout 3 takes place in Washington, D.C., and Fallout 4 takes place in Boston. These are all places with immense relevance in Americana, as is the locale of Fallout 76, West Virginia. John Denver's Take Me Home Country Roads is used extensively in the promotional material, not only because it is by far the most commonly known song associated with West Virginia, to the extent that it is even covered in one of my favorite Studio Ghibli films, Whisper of the Heart, but also because its longing and wistfulness fit well with the idea of having to adjust to life in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. But West Virginia itself fits the ethos of the game, because its reputation has been that of a region afflicted by poverty and strife and iniquity, and it is not exactly an unearned reputation. However, it's also been a region wherein people have banded together to fight against that iniquity. Fallout 76 doesn't exactly reinvent the wheel. It's not a groundbreaking entry in its series, and I would not call it the best game of the year, but it does set itself apart from other entries in the series by moving away from the pulpier material that has permeated past games and more to something more melancholy and dire, the quest to rebuild a ruined world. That melancholy is tinged with a hint of hope only because the journey toward revitalizing the ruined world is not a journey to be taken alone, but rather a journey to be shared with others. Because of this, the game being multiplayer is only appropriate.
It falls on you and the ingenuity of your fellows to rebuild the America we hold dear.
Great post-apocalyptic work always plays with two competing forces, loneliness versus companionship and connection. The focus is never on grandiose climaxes. These works understand that the apocalypse itself is far less interesting than how individuals react to it. How do they adapt? How do they find the strength to keep on living? The world may never be like it was, and if it recovers at all, it will not recover in the lifetimes of those living in the immediate aftermath of the chaos. The hallmarks of the post-apocalyptic genre are monsters, vile humans, who are your direct adversaries, and the struggle to keep finding food and water. But as important is the crushing despair of those who have to live in this brutal world. Loneliness crushes them. Pretty much everyone has lost someone, whether because that someone died in the immediate aftermath of the apocalypse, such as Joel's daughter in The Last of Us, or whether they kill themselves like the man's wife in The Road. One of the greatest battles in the post-apocalypse is fighting against the loneliness. In The Last of Us, Joel is able to do this through his relationship with Ellie. In The Road, the man is able to do this through his relationship with his son. In Fallout 76, the first to exit the wasteland are able to do this through their relationships with each other and the necessity of the objective set before them. Anyway, if you liked what you saw today, consider donating to my Patreon so I can produce even more stimulating content. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All that explosive stuff. Adios, comrades!